welcome to the Wilderness Society's live premiere of the IMAGO video. My name is Carlin Itchak. I'm the Senior Regional Director for the Alaska region, and I'm pleased to welcome all of you here today into our live webinar. And I use he, him, his pronouns, and we're coming to you live from the Alaska Native Heritage Center here in Anchorage, Alaska, on the unceded territory of the Dena'ina people. We're always thankful for the original stewards of the land and give credit to the ancestors who took care of this land before us, and we thank the Dena'ina people for allowing us to be on their land. We also want to acknowledge the land of the Inupiaq and the Gwich'in people for whom the IMAGO place-based trips have taken place. Once again, welcome to the IMAGO premiere of our video. We're going to have a quick introduction of our guests, but I just want to acknowledge who's with us today, our panelists. We have Mita DeWitt, Natalie Dawson, Kaushik Amrathur, Robert Thompson, and Sarah James. Unfortunately, Nutuk was unable to join us for reasons beyond her control, but we're very thankful to have everyone here who's traveled the long ways. And we're especially thankful for all of you who are tuning in from your desks or from your homes or your offices. Thank you for being here today to share this journey with us about the IMAGO Initiative and our place-based trip. Just to give you a quick overview of the IMAGO Initiative, many of you are familiar with the IMAGO Initiative or have participated in our place-based dialogues or with our IMAGO task force. But the IMAGO Initiative started in 2019 when the Wilderness Society took our internal diversity, equity, and inclusion work and made this outward manifestation of that work where we're trying to recognize the wrongs of the past and change how we move in the future, looking at land protections through an Indigenous worldview. So the IMAGO Initiative began with that in mind, and it's about bridge building and bringing people together, connecting Indigenous people with conservation leaders, Indigenous leaders, conservation leaders, and agency leaders, and seeing how we can meet on the land and brainstorm new ideas and new protections. It's also about healing, healing from historical trauma related directly to the historical dispossession of land through assimilation and termination policies. It's also about equitable access to wilderness. It's about thinking outside of the box and how we can envision land protections that benefit everyone. It's about uplifting the rights of the Indigenous people that have lived on the land since time immemorial. It's about recognizing their inherent self-determination and sovereignty, while at the same time protecting our wilderness character and preserving our public lands for everyone to enjoy. So it's a real pleasure to have you all here today, and we're excited to show this film with you. We have Kaushik Amrathur, who helped put the film together with assistance from Emily Sullivan from the Northern Center and Mason Cummings from the Wilderness Society. And there's so many people that have helped to make this possible. I especially want to thank our president, Jamie Williams, our executive team, our governing council at the Wilderness Society, my former boss, Peter Angst, who was really instrumental in making this happen, my current boss, April Yee and Mo, for really supporting this project. And we couldn't have done this IMAGO initiative without the leadership of our IMAGO coordinator, Mita DeWitt, who I'm going to pass the mic to here. But I just really want to thank Mita for all of her leadership and for helping take the dream and making it a reality. Mita has put our plan into action. She's a traditional healer, a dreamer, a coalition builder, and a paradigm shifter. I'm proud to introduce our IMAGO coordinator, Mita DeWitt.
Leika kleinach Mita DeWitt yuchat duasak, Slinget kleinach Detsinak yuchat duasak, Nanyaina chatzati, Kachadi yeri chatzati, Shtakin kwan ayachat, My English name is Mita DeWitt. My Tlingit names are Tsetsinak and Kot Klat. And my adopted Inupiaq name is Tigigiluk. I live on Denina Eslana with our family. And I'm also the IMAGO Initiative coordinator for the Wilderness Society. Really, this came from a place of wanting to have access to our traditional ways and culture in natural spaces that are healthy. And that desire to harvest plants and make medicine and have them for food allowed this journey to begin and to help in this space of community building and organizing. So it's been a very enlightening process to help bring this into these skills that were taught by our elders and our ancestors into this space of bringing people together, diverse groups of people from conservation, indigenous, and also our law and policy makers. And we do this through a traditional process of coming together in ceremony and holding that sacred space for deep dialogues that are from the heart. And so that's what you'll be seeing in this film today, or at least part of it. I would like to acknowledge that while we have this beautiful panel of relatives with us today, we also have many other IMAGO participants that have gone on trips with us. We have had a total of 7 IMAGO trips. And in the last 2 trips that we had, there were 22 people and 23 people as well. So we all represent hundreds of people who've come together to dream and to create change in ways that are meaningful and long-standing, and to address climate change as a fundamental impetus for transformation as a human race and coming back into the right ways. So I'm going to go ahead and call on our panelists with us today. Our first one that we'll hear from, the introduction, is Sarah James. Sarah, would you please introduce yourself?
My name is Sarah James. I said, today, how are you? And I'm doing fine. Being part of the panel, being part of the organization, it helps me as an individual, it helps my people, it helps the other people, because Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is public interest land. It all belongs to us. And since 1988, when Kaushik Nation put the position together against the gas and oil development within the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which we call sacred place where the life began. It's been an education for me. It's been a learning for me, because I grew up off the land. English is my second language. I'm very honored and that I got honorary and doctorate degree from University of Fairbanks in April. So I'm happy to be a Dr. Sarah James. And it's been long years for me, 79 years old. And I can remember since 1950. And I was raised off the land. My mom and dad never had a Western job where they got paid. So that's how I grew up off the land, to respect the land and take care of the environment, and in return, it'll take care of you. There's only us family out there, but we live by that law. It's a natural law. It's a traditional law. So back in May 2018, our tribe took over the whole issue as a tribe, government to government. So they chose me to be the elder spokesperson. So my heart and my life and my way of life come from representing my tribe and educating the world in a good way, why we say no to oil. And that's been very good. So many people came forward because at that time they didn't know us back in 1988. Now we're doing education that long and we have made many friends. There is possible that we can live all together in a clean environment and take care of Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, take care of our people, take care of our sister, everybody around us. And that's how I look at this group or this team that we have going. And it's been very good. I said thank you very much on my relation. Thank you.
Ganesh Chish. Robert?
My name is Robert Thompson. I'm from Kaushik, Alaska. For those who might not know about us, we're in the very northern part of Alaska, and our village is within the borders of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. So we're on an island in the Beaufort Sea, and we're actually within the borders of the refuge. So I first went up there probably about 50 years ago. My wife was born there. And so I was out in the refuge before they even thought about oil or anything. And so I always made my living on the land. I made my living fur trapping for many years. And when I first went to the Arctic, we went out on the refuge. And then later on, many years later, there started to be the movement to open it for oil. So I got involved in that because I said, hey, I don't want to hunt in an oil field. And so that's been a long time. I first really got into it about 20 years ago, and I guess what I'd tell people nowadays is every little bit helps. A lot of people put a lot of effort into saving the Arctic Refuge, and sometimes it felt like we could lose it, but everybody kept working on it. Now it's at this moment it seems quite secure. But I tell people we got to keep working on it until we get a wilderness designation. That's the only thing I can see that would give it permanent protection. So I'm going to do all I can. And what I do is I make my living wilderness guiding. So I've taken photographers and people that can go out and show what it is, and I'll continue to do that. Right now, there's two refuge projects that are happening, and they will be. What I see is once people see what's there, they want to save it. And so I'll be doing all I can until we get wilderness. So thank you for your interest, and tell people about what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Kaushik?
Thank you, Mira. I'm Kaushik, based out of San Francisco, London, and New York. I'm an architect by education and formal training in photography and filming, and been doing this for a long time. And my thanks to my team at Third Eye Media, without whom, for me, this would not have been possible. And also Allison, who led the pre-production and post-production efforts of this film, along with Mason at the Wilderness Society. And first and foremost, I have to say, all this would not have been possible without Carlin. And thank you, Carlin, for giving me the opportunity to direct this film and to be a part of this beautiful documentary. And thanks to Mira for all the education and support along the way. So my gratitude goes to you all. At the end of the day, this is about the communities, and this is about the elders. And meeting them, for me, was the highlight of this entire documentary. So as much as it's an amazing honor and an opportunity to direct this, the kudos goes to all of you all who make this possible every step of the way. And for the 23 wonderful people I met there who I'd never seen before, this was an amazing experience, which only hopefully makes me a better person along the way. So thank you all for this opportunity again.
All right, thank you, Kaushik. Natalie?
Hello. Nice to see all of you. Thanks for joining us. And many thanks to the Wilderness Society and to Carlin and Mita, Danielle, and the whole team for giving us the opportunity to talk about the IMAGO Initiative, which is truly a family, as Mita mentioned. I am currently the Director of Strategic Partnerships for Alaska Venture Fund. However, when I started my work with the IMAGO Initiative, I, at that time, was the Vice President for the National Audubon Society. And though I've been many things and have been shaped over almost 2 decades working across Alaska's public lands and waters, I think first and foremost, I'm someone who loves to continually learn from people and the land. The IMAGO Initiative, to me, was an opportunity to learn an entirely different way of stewarding our lands and waters into the future, learning from the people who have been doing that since time immemorial. I am so thankful for the opportunity to continue to participate in the IMAGO Initiative. Even when titles and jobs change, what truly brings us together is our passion for each other, for place, and for a world that we can envision. Thank you so much.
Wonderful, thank you, Natalie. So here in just a few moments, we're going to watch our video that we created as a group, as a family. And it's going to talk about this vision that we are co-creating together. I just wanted to say thank you to Sarah James and Robert Thompson and Kaushik and Natalie for all traveling here. It's a blessing to be able to be together in person. And over the years, we've had to communicate through Zoom, but in Alaska, because we're so geographically large, our state is 20% of the United States landmass, and not all of our rural communities have good connectivity or good internet access. And so we wanted to make sure that we could be here together so we could have this space and hear each other and all be represented on equal grounds, and wanting to have that equitable voice. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to transition into the video. And once we're done with the video, we'll have a discussion with each person talking about their vision for the future and how they, either their response to the video or any messaging that they brought with them from the heart that they want to share with you. And then once they're done speaking, we'll go ahead and open for questions and answers. So I look forward to sharing this experience with you and this video that we all worked on so well together. Ganesh.
Ayanga hey hey yanga, ayanga hey hey yanga, ayanga hey hey ya, ayanga hey hey ya, ayanga hey hey yanga, ayanga hey hey yanga, ayanga hey hey ya, ayanga hey hey ya, ayanga hey hey yanga, ayanga hey. The United States is not an Arctic nation without Alaska. Alaska is not an Arctic state without the Inupiaq and Gwich'in people. We're the experts who have been protecting this land for over 10,000 years.
Those places are only wilderness and refuges because our people kept them the way they were meant to be.
This is where my ancestors were from. This is where many of our stories originated.
It's definitely a place to protect, but it's also part of this continuum, this landscape that extends far beyond the borders of the Arctic Refuge to all corners of the world.
It was our land as we'd used it for thousands of years. There was no, there was no fear that we're going to lose it. Now there is.
What I want is for a clean earth for our great-grandchildren.
What we co-create together, it can be beautiful and it can balance the rest of the world.
This is a story of Arctic Indigenous peoples in right relationship with the land. It's an invitation to reimagine conservation and what stewardship and healing mean for our collective future. Our story is told through the eyes of the IMAGO Initiative. 22 Indigenous and conservation partners convened on the banks of the Hula Hula River to work together and heal through connecting with the land and with one another.
I'm Carlin Itchak.
My English name is Mita DeWitt.
My name is Sarah James.
My name is Nudak Simmons.
My name is Robert Thompson.
My name is Victoria Hikes-Steer.
I'm Flora Deacon.
My name is Nari Toller.
My name is Kunan Smith.
I'm John B. Good.
My name is Dr. Natalie Dawson.
My name is Desiree Sorensen Groves.
My name is Pam Miller.
My name is James Paoli.
My name is Margie Deshevsky.
My name is Lily Patton.
I am Melinda Spooner.
My name is Julia Johnston.
My name is Carl Straley.
The land doesn't belong to us. We belong to the land. We're trying to transform our old way of thinking, to have this paradigm shift, to go from a caterpillar into a butterfly, something beautiful that can fly into the future for 7 generations. And we're recognizing the rights of the indigenous people. IMAGO is I-M-A-G-O. And it turned out that the I could stand for indigenous. M could stand for management. A stands for access. We need access to our lands. G is guardianship or stewardship. And then O is ownership. And the IMAGO Initiative came about when we heard Winona LaDuke. She was talking about how the transformative system within a caterpillar, where the IMAGO cells in a caterpillar allow it to transform into a butterfly. And I love that. And I asked her, I said, can I use that name IMAGO for our initiative? We're trying to transform the conservation community.
Together, we are healing from trauma, building connections, and exploring our collective past and future. We are learning and unlearning the history of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and we are working to preserve it for future generations.
We have a plethora of plants that are used as food and medicine in these spaces. This one is a sura. It's fuzzy underneath, and that's how we know that it's sura. You see how it has that fuzzy, velvety texture to it. So these are good to eat. Salicylic acid reduces fevers. It also reduces pain and inflammation. And it tastes really good. So everybody grab a piece. Utuku.
The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is a vast, intact ecosystem of vital importance to Alaskans and the nation as a whole. Its coastal plain is a sacred birthing ground of the porcupine caribou herd, which helps sustain the indigenous Gwich'in and Inupiat people, who have lived in this region for thousands of years.
We need to reimagine what this place should be with indigenous values, management strategies, and knowledge.
I always speak for Ishikotsan Kwantay Kotlet, that may sacred place where the life began, the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, where caribou people, caribou is our life, caribou is our song, caribou make us who we are. This is a human rights to us. We have a right to be caribou people.
The Arctic Refuge coastal plain faces imminent threat of oil extraction, which would devastate its unique ecosystem.
In an ideal world, the life for the indigenous people in the Arctic would look like what it did 10,000 years ago. And I say that would be ideal because I think a lot of the pain and historical trauma that our people have faced as a result of rapid assimilation and termination wouldn't exist.
The communities that are most affected by extractive industry and ensuing climate change are the same communities that have suffered forced assimilation and historical trauma through colonization and dispossession of land.
Growing up, I didn't have much, I didn't have any confidence in myself. In fact, I really didn't believe that I was a human. I heard a lot in the schools how dumb we are, and that got to me. But later on, you know, after I realized it's not true, you know, the more you hear it, the more you believe it. I am a product of the Doctrine of Discovery. I grew up believing that I was nothing, just a mat for people to walk on. I am a strong woman. I can stand up tall. And so I've learned to speak up. I learned that I am okay. I am good just the way I am. I am an Inupiaq woman. And I love being an Inupiaq woman. And I love helping, being behind the young people who are working to save this place.
Ours is a story of inclusivity and equity, one that re-envisions how protected areas are designed, how conservation is accomplished, and who benefits.
We are a powerful people, and I've learned from elders from all over, instead of fighting against something, they said work towards what you want, and that's what we're doing. We're creating a space with the people that have the same values and the same goals.
Caribou skin hut dance. It's a dance for welcome you to Arctic Refuge, to Alaska, to the world, to the universe. It's a welcome dance. We're very generous people, humble people. This is our home. Caribou skin hut. What's that? Ningva, je, tsatsa. Hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, 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 oh, hey, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey, 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 oh, hey, hey, hey,
Those places, they exist the way they are because we didn't develop a culture that took more than we needed. And so it's really important that the people remain a part of those places because they will be their fiercest protectors.
We go back to seventh generation, we go to the next seventh generation. That's how my people make plan for life so we can survive. That's how we make decision.
As we transition into this next era of our existence and the planet, we're going to have to address our relationship to each other.
What we have now is looking at the viability of the land from the Western lens, that the agencies have to regulate and manage the animals and the wildlife. The indigenous people, we looked at managing people and watching what we do. We only take what we need. We share everything we take.
If you want a world where we can continue to exist, we have to start living differently. We have to start being humble again. We have to take responsibility for the choices we make.
So often for big green conservation organizations, we focus on legislative wins, which are absolutely important, but what really motivates me and excites me is transformational change, where we change the actual systems. So you're really kind of decolonizing conservation, government, and coming up with different ways to actually do this work together.
This is the beginning of looking at the framework of including healing and human healing in that process, and not just focusing on natives needing to be healed, but communities need to be healed. We need to be able to have conservation and indigenous groups working together. They're going to be stronger that way.
The Arctic is ground zero for climate change. In order to tackle the climate crisis, Indigenous leaders must be at the forefront of decision-making, and governments must learn to listen to the land and its inhabitants.
We have to look at systems that benefit the ecosystem as an economic partner. This space up here, it holds the weather for the rest of the earth. It keeps the rest of the earth stable. So when we're looking at this space, we have to look at it collectively as a human race, as our treasure that we need to keep whole. It's going to be fundamental for our survival as human beings.
It's also a place where we will learn to adapt to the future that's in front of us and the rapid changes that we're already seeing, because we know that nature and humans being part of nature have the ability to adapt and change.
If we don't do anything, future generations might not have a place to live. The polar bear could be extinct in my lifetime because of climate change. So, you know, when I got into opposing the refuge development, it was to preserve an area where we hunt. But to me, it's evolved to something much more, the health of the planet, future generations.
Through connection, through place-based healing, through brainstorming and conversation, we are reimagining the future of this land. We are envisioning a healthy planet for the next 7 generations.
Everything has a spirit. The rocks, the plants, the walrus, the seals. So you treat everything with respect. And when that balance in nature is thrown off, it impacts everybody. And not just everybody here, but everyone around the planet.
I want them to know the spirit of our people. The way we look at life.
And I choose to believe that we have the opportunity to create a world more beautiful than it's ever seen before. But we have to make that choice.
And we can return to our sacred purpose as human beings once again.
Hey
Kuyanakbuk, thank you for watching the premiere of our IMAGO video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed watching it again. I can't thank enough all the people who came together to make that video possible. There are so many people. And just to remind you what you already know, this was all done during the pandemic. We had 7 trips, mostly during the pandemic, and there was just so many challenges and roadblocks, and I am so grateful and so thankful to all the people that came together to help make these trips and this video a reality. Again, to Third Eye Media, Kaushik and his team, Mason Cummings and our digital and external affairs team, our comms team, Emily Sullivan at Northern Center, all of the folks on our digital team that helped with the storyboarding and putting everything together. Mita and Danielle Stickman, our deputy director, whose voice you heard narrating the film. Just so grateful for all the participants. If you haven't been into the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, you should go and you should see it. As Robert always tells us, if you see it, you'll want to protect it. And we just want to lift up the Gwich'in Steering Committee, the Arctic Refuge Defense Campaign, Desiree, who you saw in the video, and all of the great work that they're doing to protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and the coastal plain. Also want to thank all of our elders who were on the trip and all of our participants. Thank Sarah and Robert for guiding us for many years and for teaching us and leading us the way to protect the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge in a really good way. I want to thank our team here, John Butsky and Gabe Tagosiak from TCM, Talking Circle Media, and Tim Woody from our team who's here as well, and Andrew Toyak, our Western Arctic manager. This is such a team effort, and every time I watch this video, I kind of choke up. It's hard to explain. Every trip has been different. All of the conditions around the trips were different. Sometimes we have to take 19 charters in. We have to get permissions and permits and things from the refuge folks. We have to coordinate. And when I say we, I mean Mita has to coordinate with all these folks to go into the Arctic Refuge. And as you saw, we're about 80 miles south of Kaktovik and about 60 miles north of Arctic Village, trying to find a place where we're not in the sacred calving grounds of the porcupine caribou herd, to respect the wishes of the Gwich'in, and also to be in a place where we can connect with the land and with each other. And I think you get a good feeling from the video of what it's like to be there, but I really encourage you to go if you haven't been there. And a lot of the things we don't show that we experience is the laughter, the tears, the joy, the pain, the hope, the despair, the fear, the courage, the hugs, the dialogue, the listening, the bonding, the exploring, the learning, the unlearning, the connecting with each other and with the animals. It's just so powerful to wake up and have 2,000 or more caribou from the porcupine caribou herd on the mountain, or to see grizzly bears and wolves with our partners. And bears, the bears are amazing. And the birds that migrate from all 50 states and numerous countries. It's just a beautiful place, and we hope you'll join us in protecting it, but also join us in envisioning new land protections through an indigenous worldview. I also want to thank our donors that make this IMAGO initiative possible: the Wilderness Society, Wilberforce Foundation, Triple 4S, the Campion Foundation, and the Alaska Venture Fund. We couldn't do it without all of your continued support and the support of our many partners and participants. Mita?
Sheesh, Kuyana, Carlin. I just have to take a minute because watching this video every time it draws emotion, because they're, just hearing the stories and hearing our elders talk about how passionate they are in protecting the refuge and really speaking to the intergenerational process of sharing knowledge with each other and imparting culture to our younger generations. And as an Indigenous people, it is part of our culture to be protectors and stewards of the land, to be guardians of the land. And so going into this process, bringing our elder teachings and working with the local tribes to have the appropriate protocols met for when we go into the refuge. There's reasons why we're 80 miles off of the coast, because we need to be out of the calving grounds of the caribou herd. That's why we're up in the mountains. And when we create this space, we have a base camp because we bring elders in with us to stay with us during these times. And we move forward in a community. So everybody takes turns in the kitchen with Flora. Flora Deacon is our Indigenous chef, and she's a rock star on our team. And everybody takes dishes as a chore at least a few times, except of course our elders don't have to do dishes. And we take turns in the process of caring for each other and creating that social emotional bond that you have in small communal spaces. And we lay out the trip on the framework of a traditional talking circle. So the first part of this event or the coming together is just introductions to each other, introductions to the land, and getting settled in. As Carlin says, it takes 3 days even just to detox from the Western world and the speed of our days and the Wi-Fi and everything we have to do, the stress. We also make sure that the food that we provide is high quality, really clean food, so it helps in that detoxification process. And we smudge, we offer prayers and tobacco, and we settle into this space. And then once we go through that first part, which also includes outings onto the land, so introduction to the land and the area that we're in, then the second part is a process of learning about the history, really hearing from our elders, telling us stories about the decades and generations of protecting in relationship with the land in that space, and also creating a container or a nest so that everybody who is there together has a safe space to speak, whether they're Indigenous or conservation or policymakers. Everyone gets to have a space to speak as an equitable journey through this process. And then we don't even start to imagine the future until the last 3 days that we're there, 2 or 3 days, because when you're out on the land, it creates an adjustment. It creates an adjustment in our perceptions of ourselves, because when we're in boardrooms, it's easy to talk about a space that's really far away. It's like this big on a map. And when you're out there, in the refuge, it's almost as big as South Carolina. And you're in these mountain ranges, and you're there with the land and the animals and the water and big open skies and weather, and so close to all of these real spaces. It changes your perception and helps to be more humble, and really, instead of feeling in power over that space, you feel that space is the one that is protecting you or us. It's really what is protecting us and sheltering us and caring for us. And so we try to impart that in this video. And I just really want to say also thank you to Kaushik, because he came to be in service and he brought his best equipment out into one of the most pristine wild spaces in Earth and help to create these moments so that we could bring this energy and intention out to the world with all of you. So Ganesh Chish. We're going to go ahead and transition over to our panel to hear about your thoughts and dreams and hopes. So Sarah, you.
The panel and Wilderness Society. Ninjatoncha, that means, how are you? And I say, Shinjikunzi, I'm doing fine. The only way we're gonna get a permanent protection is by the Congress. And the Congress nearby you is very important, representing you to make your voice heard across the board, across the whole our nation. Because Arctic National Wildlife Refuge belong to us, to the whole United States citizen. So you do have a voice. And we've been going through this process every 4 years. We're doing it again. And we got friends now. We can do it. And the only way we can do it to make a permanent protection is to make it wilderness protection. And to us, as a Netsai Kuchen tribe, we have a problem with that wilderness, but we finally defined it into our life and our way of life. And to us, like when we wanted a wilderness, make it sound like it's there to be tamed. We wanted permanent protection, which is to us is protection how the Creator made it. That's how we want it. That's what wilderness to us. So that's finally the final decision from the elders defining what we wanted. We wanted the way Creator made it. So it's up to you to be on the radio, TV, panel, newspaper, phone calls, TV. Those are very important to reach your neighbors in your living room. And that's what we've been doing. Some people in the hard times, sometimes we went through a lot of hurdle where people work on this issue 24/7 up to the January 6th. So we are doing something right. We are, because the film shows, I saw Nupiaq there, I saw Koyakan, Yupik, and I saw there's just five entity of indigenous people in Alaska, which is Athabascan, and so their voice is in there. It's not, you're gonna hear from other side that Alaska wants it. But from us, we respect our way of life and our way of hunting, fishing, and just living off the land. Like I said, there was might be only us out there when I was growing up. But my mom is very direct, and my father is very direct about taking care of the environment. If we don't, they won't take care of us. And it's always, caribou is always in our heart. Porcupine caribou is always in our heart. And we're in their heart, in the caribou heart, because it makes two to survive. And we all need to do that. So Ashikotsankontayikotlet means sacred place where the life begins, not only for the caribou, but for many other animals, birds and ducks, wolf, white owl, polar bears, wolf ring. They're there too, up in the foothills, raising their young, and they're down here, porcupine, raising their young at the coastal plain, sacred place where the life began. Once I had a beautiful baby one time, and I wanted a safe place, a private place, a clean place. And every living needs that. And that's what they get. They go there before pregnant, post having, and then they feed, then they birth, and then training, feeding, nursing, and then training. They need that place, quiet, clean, private. And that's what they got there. And that's the only place, because they travel 1,000 miles every year. And there are other caribou in Alaska that you will hear story about. And there are different, but this is porcupine caribou herd, which is traveled along this distant, more natural. They're not mixed in with reindeer. So we're talking about that. We're talking about our food on our table, our tools, our clothing, our housing, everything to us. It's our song, it's our dance, it's our prayers. People make prayers, sing, dance. 1988, when our Kucha Nation made that decision. And then again, we made decision as a tribe, as Nets Kuchan, May year 2018. Now we have a table on a table process with the government, to government. And that's where I sit as a spokesperson for my tribe, for my 3 federally recognized tribe. And we get the first-hand information, and we speak for everybody, because we're once all of us, at one time, until we got colonized into village life, or else they'll take our kids away. We had to sit in certain places. We were nomadic people at one time, but now we're colonized into village life. But we kept the name Arctic Village in Vinitai, Netsai, for everybody. Everybody was Netsai at one time. So we're not leaving anybody out to protect the caribou for the whole Netsai, or the whole Kucha Nation. That haven't changed it. We're all united, not compromising, and do it in a good way, the way the elders gave us direction back in 1988. I was chosen one of the spokesperson for life, and I'm still there. I'm honored that, and I also honor the University of Alaska Fairbanks for giving me an honorarian doctorate. So I feel like I'm really honored to speak for a place where I came from, where the place where my ancestor came from, where the place my people came from, where the caribou came from. And caribou got a footprint throughout the whole Arctic Refuge. It's not only coastal plain. We all used it. Now that 15 villages depend on the caribou, which in villages on Canada and US, even though there is a border between us, we're still united. So thank you for all the time, and thank you for relaying the message to people that might help, and make it a permanent protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Are you ready, Robert?
Okay, I'm glad to be part of this IMAGO initiative. I can see some very positive benefits. For so many years, everybody was concentrating on preserving the refuge. So some things related to our culture got kind of put aside. Now I think we can get back to a lot of things in our culture that, well, were taken away. And the idea that Native people are now given a chance to have a voice on the lands around us. When the Arctic Refuge was created, they didn't tell anybody living there, and some people lost rights to the land that they had in native allotments. They weren't able to acquire those. So this new initiative, I think there'll be more involvement, more people learning about the land, the culture. It's already started because of these the meetings we had, meeting with all other people, we can compare different ideas, and already there's some things being started. And as one person said in the film, we can make it what we want. And with this idea, I think we'll retrieve a lot of the culture, the language, and things that were taken away. And the knowledge of how it came about. We had the Catholic Church made a decree, the Doctrine of Discovery, where it's okay to go take people's land. And even now, there's an effort to get that repealed, and the Catholic Church doesn't want to repeal it. They say, we already did enough to make up for that. But if you read that doctrine, it'll say that it's okay to go and take their land. Convert them to Christianity, and if they don't, you can take their land and make them slaves or whatever you want to do with them. And it's good to see that that era is over with, and people are aware of it and are going to move on and progress. And yes, that happened, but we're not going to let it continue to affect us. So I think this IMAGO initiative is a good start for that, and the networking that we do. And so actually, I think the refuge is fairly secure. I do think we should go for a wilderness designation, but I think we've got another issue that everybody should be very concerned about: climate change. We can see effects of climate change in the Arctic that are very serious. People probably don't realize that, but we have, we used to have muskox. They're gone because of climate change. The polar bear are on the way out. And it's all things that were created by people, and now we can see ways to do it. So I'll be involved in trying to get alternative clean energy for the North Slope and more efficient housing. And there's positive things we can do, and this IMAGO initiative gives us a vehicle or a way to tie into a network to accomplish positive things for us. So whoever's watching this, I thank you for your interest, and get the message out. The new big issue is climate change for everybody. We got to get off of fossil fuel. That was the initial problem we had, is the interest in fossil fuel that would come in and take over our land for oil production. But I think that we're getting away from that. But the issue is still there, and I see little things here and there where things are being done, but I think it's got to be a total massive effort to turn it around, because there's so many effects that we have in the Arctic that people don't see in the towns. When we lose animals that we hunt for food, it's pretty serious. But it just, more and more things happening with climate change that are, well, that I read the news. We're having another serious storm in Northwest Alaska, and they had one about a week or so ago in Florida. These are all things that are caused by climate change and fossil fuel. So to whoever's listening to this, I think we all got to do something, and as much as we can. So thank you for your interest.
Thank you, Robert. And I just wanted to remind people to, if you have any questions, we'll have time for question and answers after our panel speaks. So if you have it in your mind right now as Robert's speaking, go ahead and pop it into the chat for the webinar, and we'll get to them after our panel is speaking and have open questions. Thank you. Kaushik?
Thank you, Mita. Again, on behalf of my team, I'd like to thank the Wilderness Society, Carlin, Mita, Danielle, for this amazing opportunity. And it was an honor to be a part of this project. And there were many people that were involved on this, both on screen and off screen. I mean, if I start naming names, I'm going to forget, to be honest with you. So to be all fairness, it was people that you see and the people that you don't see on this that were involved. And it was every one of them played a really big, crucial part in making this successful. And just before this, I had a chance to watch a little bit on this big screen, and it looks really, really impressive. I'm so proud of this, actually. And some of the things personally, growing up, I grew up in India, and I've lived here over 20 years in the US and operating in both London and America. A few things for me. One is getting to know the elders, the indigenous communities who I had not met in person, getting to know their amazing stories of survival and what they've been through. And they define what sustainability is. I mean, it's in a part of their DNA. We talk sustainability, and all these words are nice, but what does it mean to live that? That is what was very interesting. And it was actually a lot of knowledge. For me, it was learning. I was learning on a daily basis, starting from how to pitch a tent and how to live in one. You'll listen to those stories sometime. Yeah. And it is also, as the film says, Arctic is the ground zero for climate change. And I think we all, we have an amazing group of people, and hopefully this word will spread, and it's something that's very important for us to stabilize future communities and the future of our planet. And again, I thank you for this opportunity, and my team enjoyed this a lot. And it's been a real pleasure, and hope to be in touch with you all. Thank you.
There's a lot of stories, and so that's where my mind went. And I just wanted to say that just thank you for coming out and trusting in the process. Just for the audience, so this was actually Kaushik's first time camping. And so not only was he camping, but he was extreme base camping. And you're just so good-spirited. We really appreciated your humor and being in that space as well. You as a human.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Natalie?
Yeah, thank you again for being with us, and thanks to everyone for the opportunity to both go to the refuge as well as to tell stories from our time as a group there. And I always really appreciate learning from Sarah and Robert. So many special conversations while we were in the Arctic Refuge, primarily told through story. And to me, I feel like the IMAGO Initiative is an opportunity to tell a different story about how all of us collectively grapple with these huge challenges in front of us, not only as people in discourse on the future of lands, but also in terms of climate change, a challenge that we are all working through together. And the IMAGO Initiative is a different kind of story, as mentioned in the film, about inclusivity and equity, and bringing these values and concepts into the realm of conservation, which hasn't always been an inclusive enterprise. And that was one of the things that was mentioned in the film around conservation, was this idea of systems change. In order to really address
climate change and all of its challenges that we are all experiencing and living through right now, we really have to think about different systems. And that's systems in forms of governance, it's systems in forms of education, it's systems in form of how we treat each other as humans. And the IMAGO Initiative is just one specific way that we can treat each other differently by opening up spaces for dialogue, getting together on the land, whether that's in a community center in an urban area or a wild landscape like the Arctic Refuge, far away from any airport. And in either one of those cases, we can still come together as community to learn from each other and exchange ideas and ask each other, how does this sound? What do you feel about this? How should we address this concept? An example of how we do this and how we've been doing it in the IMAGO Initiative is this idea of Indigenous-Led Conservation, or an entirely new Indigenous value system on top of a conservation of a specific landscape. The place we're talking about here is the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. A national wildlife refuge has a very specific meaning in the United States and a set of protections around it. We could also be thinking about different ways of designating lands and waters under new and inclusive priorities that are set by groups of people like the IMAGO Initiative coming together and saying, look, there's a different way we could govern these lands. Instead of our human values governing them, we could instead allow the rivers to tell us how we should be governing these places. Or instead of looking at this landscape based on political boundaries, we should really be looking at the caribou herds and how they're distributed and how they're going to be distributed with climate change. So these are big questions, but the way we start getting at these questions is how they've always been done, which is getting together as people and listening. And so I'm just so thankful that we are intentionally creating these spaces to do this work with the IMAGO Initiative. And I really hope that there's opportunities in the work that folks in our audience are doing to think of ways in which you can create these collective communities for dialogue in the work that you do, or even in your communities where you live. So thank you again. It's always really inspiring to get together as a group and talk about what's possible.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Kaushik. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Sarah. Again, we appreciate you all coming here from actually far away places, as far as Arctic Village, Kaushik, Haynes, and London. And I wish we could, Amita and I both wish we could have all of our participants here, but I'm glad that we have this video where you can hear some of their stories. And as we mentioned, we had 7 trips so far, and we have many more planned as our IMAGO family grows. It's like a scaffolding approach where we keep building. Our first trip, we had 3 of us that went to Kaushik, and then from there, we had 7 of us went into the Arctic Refuge with Robert, and then we had 20, and we just keep building, and we'll have more place-based dialogues coming up in the next few years. And if you're interested in participating in the IMAGO Initiative or learning more about what we're doing or how you can be involved, please reach out to us after this webinar, and we'd love to engage with you and to share with you what we're doing. We also have materials that we can share. We worked with a third L law student from Georgetown, Allison Raphael, who put together a comparative analysis of 34 Indigenous protected and conserved areas, looked at best practices and different co-management methodologies. We have an attorney on contract right now, Barrett Ristroff, who's taking all of the brainstorming ideas from our IMAGO trips and putting them through a legal lens so that we can create a suite of options. We're working with folks from the Gwich'in Steering Committee and ARDC to continue uplifting and and supporting the wilderness bill that Representative Huffman and others have been introducing for these many years, a very important bill that would protect the coastal plain. And we're standing in solidarity with ARDC and the Gwich'in Steering Committee and Bernadette Dementeff. You heard Sarah James talk about the importance of wilderness, and we support that, and we need that for the coastal plain. But we're also looking at other ways in creating protections that uplift the rights of the Gwich'in and the Inupiaq people that live there. So I'm going to turn the mic now to Tim Woody, our communications manager, and he's going to share with us some of your questions, and then we'll turn it over to the panel to answer them. So Tim Woody.
Okay, our first question. As the film makes so clear, decolonizing conservation requires established conservation organizations and policymakers to re-envision their objectives in a more expansive manner that is inclusive of Indigenous perspectives.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to start the question over so I can speak louder. They can hear me up on stage. As the film makes so clear, decolonizing conservation requires established conservation organizations and policymakers to re-envision their objectives in a more expansive manner that is inclusive of Indigenous perspectives. What kind of responses has the IMAGO team encountered as you've reached out to other organizations and policymakers? And are those organizations and policymakers up to this challenge?
Sure, hopefully the audience heard that question, but thank you, Tim. In the beginning, 3 years ago, when we were slowly rolling out the IMAGO Initiative, for the first 2 or 3 weeks, I got a lot of phone calls about people being concerned that we're trying to get rid of Big W wilderness, or that we were trying to push for giving all the land back, take the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and give it all back to Indigenous people. And so it took quite a while for us to educate folks about what we're trying to do. This is more than an initiative, it's a movement. And we're not trying to get rid of Big W wilderness. We're not trying to request that all of the land be given back. But we are looking at ways that we can have more concurrent or shared ownership. Why can't the federal government and the federally recognized tribes own the land together in fee simple, absolute, and Aboriginal title? We do that in the lower 48 or in property law where we have joint tenancy in common. And also the Wilderness Society, we have a proud history of where our founders, Howard Zahniser, Olaus and Marty Murray, Aldo Leopold, Bob Marshall, and many others. Howard Zahniser wrote the Wilderness Bill, and our founders were instrumental in creating wilderness and the wildlife refuge system. So we want to protect the wilderness character and the Wilderness Act, and so we had a lot of learning and unlearning to do along the way. But we're hoping that the IMAGO Initiative will continue to be co-created. We have to work with agencies. We have to work with all Indigenous people that are rights holders, and we have to work with industry as well to figure out what do they need. We do that, conservation groups do that in the lower 48, where we'll work with farmers and we'll work with independent third-party venture capitalist groups to pay farmers to keep oil and gas in the ground. Are we doing things like that to protect the refuge? Are we trying to find a way to bring people together even though we have differences, but while at the same time uplifting the rights of Indigenous people? And so that has been scary conversations for some people who are afraid that we're trying to take away sovereignty from the federal government or from others. So basically it's been moving at the speed of trust, a phrase you hear a lot, and then also assuring folks that we want to do this, as Sarah says, in a good way. Mita, would you like to add?
Yeah, actually, I would like to add to this question, and it's been an interesting journey because I don't want to speak too much about this, but as we know, sometimes it's hard for different groups to come together in the same space and speak, and that's a challenge in some ways, and especially if there's lots of emotions or desires that people are very passionate about. And so the IMAGO Initiative just is a multifaceted approach. And it's not just taking people out on the land, it's also going into different spaces and listening and helping to carry words and this vision and combined dream into places of policymaking, into places of lawmaking. And it was kind of interesting because a lot of people are very receptive, but I don't want to sugarcoat it. You know, we've been yelled at, and we've had people who have strong emotions, and in this process, we still listen patiently to allow people to unpack all of that built up energy that's stored within them, because those, you know, people are doing what they think is right and what they think is good. And so, and what we found is through all these groups, we actually agree, you know, on 80% or more of the topics and information. And there's only a few spaces that people may not agree. And then after we talk through it, a lot of times what we find is people actually do agree in many ways. So I'm not going to speak any further because we have more questions, but thank you for allowing me to speak.
Just question, one or several of the panelists might want to respond to this one. When you engaged in the place-based dialogues during the trip to the Arctic Refuge, what were some ideas that came out of this that you were excited about?
I can start. One idea came from the first trip in 2020, during the pandemic, kind of early days of the pandemic when we were still learning what was going on. And it was the first time I had been able to be with a group of people larger than just my partner in several months. And on that trip, one of the things we talked about was this idea of listening to the land as a way to dictate future governance opportunities. And I referenced it earlier in terms of, like, you know, what if the river wrote the rules? Or what if caribou were the way by which we drew lines on maps? And I think that's something that's really stuck with me and continues to be work that I do. I work for other tribal governments that are trying to protect river systems. And we're really looking at how do you write rules and regulations that are reflective of the inhabitants of the place, that not only include humans, but the other species. An example in the Arctic Refuge could be the importance of caribou. We've talked a lot about the importance of caribou to people, but the caribou are also important to the Arctic Refuge and the entire globe. There's research that just came out a couple years ago that shows by caribou eating grasses and sedges, they keep the shrubs, like the big bushes, they actually keep those shrubs and bushes from growing on the coastal plain as those shrubs and bushes are encroaching north with climate change. And by doing that, they're keeping the surface of the tundra cool, which is protecting the permafrost, which holds most of the carbon in the ground in the Arctic Refuge. So not only are caribou important for people, and we've known that for many, many thousands of years, thanks to the information and the stories from elders, but these caribou are actually crucial to helping keep our planet cool. And that's pretty awesome. That gives us an opportunity to think about protecting place in a totally new way. So that's one of the big takeaways for me.
Finish cheesh, Natalie. Thank you. Next question.
What can be done to convince non-Indigenous people that we need to heal from colonization? And is there a story or an experience that any of you can share to help with that?
Didn't quite hear you, but I realize there's a lot of education that we have to do like we have certain ideas that we want to implement, and we're dealing with people who want the resources. So we got a situation where people who want wilderness, those are the people who are going to stop you from hunting. And it's not true, but the other side will use such information and so that there's a movement actually against wilderness. I believe it's really good, and I'm glad it's a movement for that. But there's people that will put their spin on it, like polar bears. They're in decline. They got the numbers. They're down 56% from 10 years ago. But the pro-development people say there's lots of polar bears everywhere on Barter Island. Well, they're there because they have to come ashore because their habitat's gone. And these are sort of things that we have to try and inform the public, the people, because we can see the results. Like I mentioned earlier, we have no more muskox. We had muskox there for many, many years. They evolved on the North Slope, but they're gone because of climate change, because we get rain in the winter and it freezes their food, so they've moved to other places. And these are sort of things I see are important for us as a people to try and get more information related to climate change and our concerns. We care for the land, and we're the idea of wilderness that can be used against us, that you won't be able to hunt there anymore, which isn't even true. But that's what I see as an education process for the public, because I think everybody wants to do what they can for climate change, and we have an opportunity now. And the biggest thing that can be done is just to get off of fossil fuel. That's the root of all this problem, the climate change issue. And if nothing is done, it's predicted that this world will not be habitable by 2600. So it's very important that the issues that concern us have to be addressed in a way that it positively affects everybody. And the issue of climate change is something that we have to, everybody in the world's got to do all they can to stop it. Otherwise, in the Arctic, it's already warmed up 5 degrees average, and it's had serious effects on the wildlife and people, storms and so on that have happened. So to me, I see that's the biggest issue that we have to address, is how to inform people. If they know the truth, I think they will react in a positive way. So that's what I think.
Thank you, Robert. Next.
Again, this one may be for any of you. Federal land managers often think about how we can manage congressionally designated wilderness on lands that currently exclude the land management practices of Indigenous people. Do you have any thoughts on how the federal government could incorporate the traditional activities and knowledge of Indigenous peoples to more appropriately manage wilderness areas and federal lands in Alaska and the rest of the country?
All the new way of managing and so on, it's actually, there's some things that people probably have resentment, like we have rights to subsistence hunting, and there's people who don't have that, but that's something we should have, because we've had it forever. So some of these things will have to continue, and there again, it's a process of educating people. I mean, we're not trying to stop people from using it, just we got to have what we have had all the time, the hunting and our lifestyle.
Thank you, Robert. Sarah, would you like to answer that one?
Yes, polar bear is on endangered, will be on endangered species. And climate change is real in the Arctic for a long time, now hitting other areas, and we've been dealing with it for many years. That's no one reason. Back in 1988, we put a position on the whole Kaushik Nation, put a position on against oil and gas development within the Porcupine Caribou Calving Ground, which is Ishikotsan Gontay Gotlek. That was one reason, because they would talk about it then. And even just Arctic Village, where it's located, that used to be the tree line, but now the tree line is past Brooks Range. And that's one reason we have to settle in Arctic Village when we were forced to live in a village life, because that's where the caribou passes, that's where the fish in the lake. We don't have nothing else to eat, we'll have fish. And that's a tree line where we can build our cabin and burn the wood to keep us warm. All that decision had to be made in order to settle in Arctic Village. So it's just not a decision that made just yesterday, just made way back to survive. And in the coastal plain of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, there's not enough fresh water. And more and more, another threat to us is lack of water. Pretty soon we're not going to have any water. So we have to take care of our water resource. And that's one way is to protect the Brooks Range as a water resource. That's the only water resource for the porcupine caribou to have their calf between the ocean and the mountain Brooks Range. There's not enough clear water or clean water there. And more people are finding out that lime is the one that cleans the water. So we do have a lot of limes along the Porcupine River. We call it Porcupine River because our Porcupine River caribou passes through that the river. And we're not only looking at just where the location is, it's over a very limited area. Over on the Prudhoe Bay side, over at 48 Central Arctic Herd, you got huge coastal plain where they're doing, gas and oil now, petroleum reserve, National Petroleum Reserve. So they are developing, and they are going to develop more. And we're only talking about 1/10 of the Arctic coastline. We wanted to protect. And that's the only place that polar bears could be protected. So for all that reason, we really need, speaking on that movie, it's just really educating, a lot of educating. We need a lot of educating to reach the right people because they are out there. And that's what we're reaching for. And back in 1988, when they first made that decision, my brother told me that, no, we're not going to win because nobody knows us. So we they formed 4 from Canada and 4 from US to educate the world why we say no to oil. And we did that up to a Trump administration. And then it got very difficult. That's when our tribe came back together and took it on as a tribe, government to government. And we got our own expertise. We always have our own expertise. And they got their own expertise. So we sit right at the table across from them. And that's how that's where it's at with us as a tribe. So people need to exercise their tribal power, and we got the sovereignty rights and a lot of education, and that's what most of the time my life is what I'm doing. And like I say, I can remember since 1950 1950, they were gonna build a Rampart Dam. And later on, they stopped, my grandpa spoke on it, my father did, my oldest sister, and here I am, still. It's a long time now, but I think
Going to transition really quick, and I'm sorry to interrupt your story, but we want to recognize you for the time that you have put in all of those decades. So I'm going to turn it over to Carlin. This is the perfect time.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank our panelists, Sarah James, Robert Thompson, Kaushik Amrithur, Natalie Dawson, and my co-MC and our IMAGO coordinator, Mita DeWitt, for being here today and for doing this premiere with us. Thanks to all our technical support in the room and in a few different cities. Appreciate all of you. And thanks to all of you for tuning in and being here with us today. We want to be mindful of your time, and we thank you for being with us here for an hour and a half. I'd like to invite our Deputy Director, Danielle Stickman, up to help us present this beautiful dream catcher that she made. We were hoping that Sarah James would be with us in the refuge this summer, but for reasons beyond her control, she was unable to join us this summer. But we spent time with Sarah in Arctic Village. But we wanted to recognize your recent honorary doctorate that you received from the University of Alaska. So I'm going to turn it over to Danielle as we wind down our premiere.
Chanan, thank you. You can open it. So I'm a small business owner for Dinah and a Dreams, and Carlin asked me in early June to make something that represented all the hard work that Sarah has contributed not only to her community in the region, but all of Alaska. And that was quite the task. But this is a symbol of salmon and also ptarmigan and the landscapes that you have worked so hard for many years to protect. And so, Chanan, thank you. Thank you so much.
this is beautiful work. Thank you. I'm also an artist too, natural artist. I didn't go to school for it, but I do make dream catcher, sun catcher with willows and the natural stuff out there. I make my own loop and make my own stuff from the land. So this is very special to me. Thank you.
Koyana and Masicho. Hi, hi. So we just want to say thank you to everybody for joining us today. And my apologies for any questions that we didn't get to. We'll look at those afterwards and put out some comments in our video. I'm overwhelmed right at this moment with emotion that we were able to have our elders and our friends come with us to be here in place, and all the people that it took to be able to promote this and distribute this nationally across many platforms. So we have a huge team helping us to be successful, and I'm really grateful for everybody. And as well, my fiance, I'd like to say thank you because he helped me get here today and get elders here today, all in a good time. So it takes a family, it takes a community, it'll take all of us to be successful together. And this webinar will be available online. This video will be available online to watch for free on the Wilderness website. So it'll be wilderness.org/imago. And in that space, you can also join our email list, so that way you can receive updates from us on the IMAGO Initiative and what our next steps are, as well as contributions if you'd like to donate money towards the IMAGO Initiative so that we can keep going forward. And thank you for joining us today. By extension, you're part of the movement. You're part of this process. You're part of the vision of a future. Ganeshtish, Chinan, Koyana, Masicho.
you.